So the topic that we are doing today is the impact of the new media. This topic that we're starting off with is the impact of new media. As we speak about the impact of the new media, let me just write down the heading first. And if you write down what I write down, by the end, you'd have your notes ready with you. So to begin with, the impact of the new media. Now, first and the foremost, we need to understand what the word new media over here refers to. As we speak about new media, in contrast, or if you compare the new media with traditional media, as I've mentioned earlier, when we use the word traditional media, or when we typically using the word media, we're actually referring to traditional media. However, if we talk about a comparison here, traditional media, where the traditional media refers to television, radio, magazines, newspapers, books, so on and so forth. On the other hand, as we use the word new media, we are actually referring to a wide range of new means through which we could communicate, such as using internet, right? So new media has a lot to do with the usage of internet. So the first and the foremost thing, this has to do with internet. Number two, if we take this further, as I use the word internet, I'm actually referring to you being able to send emails, different blogs. There are certain mobile phone applications such as Twitter, Instagram. There are some virtual reality websites as well. There are many social media websites such as the Facebook. There are some applications such as I think I mentioned Twitter earlier as well. So as I use the word the new media, I'm referring to the newer form of media, the media that you all or your generation is familiar with. So when we talk about the internet, we are referring to different social media websites, different mobile applications, emails, blogs, blogs, podcasts, different streaming services like the Netflix. And all of these, I mean, these are just a few examples that I've given you. There are ample more. All of these, they are different from traditional media. Like I said, they're different from newspapers, they're different from books, they're different from newspapers, books, radios, magazines, so on and so forth. Now, we in this lesson today, we discuss the impact of the new media. Now, before we proceed with the impact, now that I've tried explaining you what the term new media actually refers to, there are a couple of characteristics of the new media. There are four different characteristics of the new media that I would like to discuss over here that would help you understand what all is it that makes all of these different platforms similar to each other. So as we take this a little further and we speak about the characteristics of new media, the characteristics of new media. Now, there are four different characteristics that I'd like to bring into your attention. Okay, towards the end of the lesson, hopefully I don't forget. I'd want to give you all a couple of examples of the questions that we've had on new media. Do we get questions on the new media in our CIs? Oh, yes, we do. So to begin with, if we speak about the characteristics of new media, there are four different characteristics that I would like to bring in under discussion over here. To begin with, we speak about digitalization. Number one. Number two, we'd speak about convergence. Let's just write these down and then I'd want to explain them all to you as well. Number three, we discuss compression. Number four, we discuss interactivity. So these are four different characteristics of the new media. These you'd see when while discussing new media, while discussing different platforms of the new media, you'd see how all of these different platforms, they have these points in common. So to begin with, what does the word digitalization mean? Now, the word digitalization over here, let me just put a heading. So we're wanting to have our notes ready as well. As we use the word digitalization, what does the word digitalization over here mean? Digitalization refers to the process of converting information. When you're converting information into a digital form, when you're converting it in a manner that the computers could process it easily. Now, this, my dear, is different from traditional media, because when we talk about traditional media used to rely on physical formats, like, for instance, newspapers, or we could talk about videotapes, we could talk about cassettes, right? So they used to rely on physical formats. However, when we speak about the new media stores and transmits content electronically. When you're storing and transmitting and processing content electronically, of course this would make it easier for you to be able to access that data. Of course, it makes it easier for you to edit that data, and not to forget to be able to share that information almost instantaneously, almost instantly, and to a wider audience. Now, as we speak about digitalization over here, it wouldn't be wrong if we say the growth of digital technology back in the 1990s has resulted in changes in the way information today is stored and transmitted. Like, I gave you an example from a time when when information used to be stored through physical formats. Today it is electronically converted. Today you use, instead of using images, text, or sounds through physical formats, today you convert them into a universal computer language, which, of course, like I had said earlier, is easier when it comes to editing, when it is easier when it comes to sharing information, and when it gets easier for you to be able to access that information as well. Now, what I'm writing in front of you right now is an amazing example of digital content. So to begin with, if you write down what digitalization refers to the process of converting information into a digital format. That can be processed, edited, and shared easily. One. So this was the first characteristic of new media. Number two, the second characteristic that we bring in under discussion over here is convergence. What does the word convergence over here mean? When we use the word, or as we use the word convergence, convergence is when you're merging different types of media into a single platform. Let's just write this down at the same time. When you convergence refers to the merging of different types of media into a single platform. Now, the smartphones that you all have, the smartphones that your generation tends to use, I'm sure more than any other generation. These smartphones, if you have a closer look, if you've ever given a thought, it's one platform, it's one medium, and through this smartphone you use it for texting, you use it for calling, you use it for internet browsing, you use it for video streaming, you use this for social media websites. This one device, this single device is a newspaper to you, is a this is a camera to you. This is your what do you call it? This is this is a newspaper to you. Like I said, this is a camera to you, this is a magazine to you, and a lot more, right? So when and as we speak about convergence, convergence, like I said, refers to the merging of different types of media into a single platform. And the best example for this could be your smartphones. You're all aware, I don't even need to write this down. It's a newspaper to you, it's a magazine to you, you use it as you use the calculator, you use it as an alarm, and a lot more. There's a lot more that I'm sure I'm missing on, and your generation of course knows a lot more about these smartphones than I do. Number three, the third characteristic that I'd like to bring in under discussion over here is compression. What does the word compression over here mean? As I use the word compression, compression is the ability of its ability to reduce the size of digital file while maintaining its quality. When we talk about compression, when we use the word compression, compression actually makes it easier to store and then transmit media. If you talk about videos, if you talk about images, you could talk about music, they are stored in your hard disks. I believe that's the word that I know for it. If you talk about hard disks over here, they're stored in the storage, whatever the places where the data is stored, without taking up too much of space. And this space without taking up too much of space actually does matter, even when we never give it a thought. Many people, I'm sure, like me, do not give it a thought. But while storing information, if it is taking less of space, that automatically means you could store more. That automatically means you can access to your content, you can have access to your data from maybe different parts of the world. If the data is stored in a manner that it is taking less of space, and if it's stored in a manner when it is taking less of space, that automatically means if you want to have access to that data from any other part of the world by using internet, that would affect, I mean, your speed wouldn't even matter then. So even if you do not really have high speed internet, if the data that you have has been compressed, you can access it better. So when we use the word compression, compression is the ability to reduce the size of digital files while maintaining quality. This makes it easier to store, which makes it easier to store, easier to access, easier to access as well. Not only that, but when we speak about compression, digital technology actually enables the compression of signals, which in other words means that this would lead to the development of new markets. Now, what sort of new markets are we talking about? New markets that are organized around the concept of narrowcasting. For this, we need to understand what the word narrowcasting over here means and how the word narrowcasting is different from the word broadcasting. When we use the word narrowcasting, we're actually referring to the transmission of particular types of media content to niche audiences. Now, if I may give you an example over here, if we like I said, if you're using the word narrowcasting, for instance, if there's any app that you've downloaded, let's just talk about Amazon for now. If I have Amazon downloaded on my phone, you have Amazon downloaded on your phone, based on the browsing history of the products that I've been looking at, don't you think the next time you'd open your phone, the next time you'd open the Amazon app, it would start showing you the things that the phone that it would start showing you the things that you have shown interest in. And for me, if I start using Amazon, it would start showing me the things that I have back in the past shown interest in. So this is an example of narrowcasting. And if you, of course, comparing it with broadcasting, for example, if you're talking about Pakistan Television Network, PTV, or if you're talking about BBC, British Broadcasting Company, they would, when you talk about broadcasting, everyone ends up seeing the same thing, everyone ends up consuming the same thing. However, on the other end, if you talk about narrowcasting, based on your particular interests, right, based on your particular interests, the media, that is the new media, would show you what you have always wanted, would show you what you have shown interest in. So this is what makes broadcasting different from narrowcasting. So these were the three different characteristics of new media. The fourth one over here would be interactivity. Interactivity. So I just add on this, the narrowcasting part to this before we forget. This has led to narrowcasting, that in other words means different content is made available for different, or it wouldn't be wrong for us to use the word niche audiences. And this is the opposite of broadcasting. Now, having said that, this fourth characteristic that we have over here, that is interactivity. What is interactivity? Interactivity allows users to engage with media in real time. Now, if you compare this with traditional media, back in the days when we were young, if you talk about television, anything that was there on the television, it used to be one-sided. I mean, the people on the television, or whoever the actors were, whoever the uh, program hosts were, they'd end up saying whatever they have to say. They'd end up doing whatever they want to do. Little, we didn't really have much of we didn't really have a way to be able to connect to them. We didn't really have a way to be able to interact with them. However, if you compare traditional media with the new media today, the new media today is interactive. If you use Instagram, you have an option of commenting, if I'm not mistaken. If you're using YouTube, you have an option of commenting. If you're using Facebook, if you're using, I mean, name a platform, and you'd realize, you'd see that it is easier, it is a lot more easier for you to be able to interact with the producers of that particular content as compared to the usage of traditional media. So when I use the word interactivity, interactivity comes from interaction. I think everyone is aware of that. Interactivity allows users to engage with media in real time, with with new media platforms, or the producers of the new media platform in real time, rather than just having to passively consume the content that was there for you. For instance, if I may give you an example over here, we could talk about the social media. There are so many online platforms that you have today, through different video games, online video games, etc. Now, do you realize, because of this interactivity, this actually gives you a very personalized experience? You end up having a very personalized experience. Now, these four characteristics that we had mentioned above, that is digitalization, convergence, compression, and interactivity. These are the different characteristics that you'd see. This is a similarity that you'd come across if you try studying different platforms of the new media. Now, when we speak about interactivity, like I said, interactivity has to do with communication, which is not one way, unlike it was when it came to when we had traditional media, because the new media enables you or gives you a greater degree of interactivity between the originator, that I was referring to as a producer of the media message, and the recipient, that is the consumer. And if you give it a thought for a bit, this interactivity has actually blurred the distinction between a producer and a consumer today. If you talk about using Instagram, if you're simply scrolling down, you're a consumer. But at the same time, if you switch on your camera, take a picture, and just put it, or what do you call it, you just post it instantly there, you very soon turn from very soon are a producer. Now you're no more a consumer. So the broad distinction that was there between the producer and the consumer back in the days when traditional media was there, today is getting blurred. So the same person one moment could be a consumer and the very next moment could be a producer. Now, as we speak about interactivity, I would like to get into a bit more of detail, and this is a continuation to the interactivity point. Now, this has actually led to a development of web w web web 2.0. Now let's talk about, since we're continuing this, we're talking about the development. So what is web 2.0 and how is web 2.0 different from web 1.0? If you talk about web 2.0, let me just put this in a box so that it is easier for you to understand. So web 2.0 refers to the second generation, 2.0, I'm sorry, of the internet, which focuses on user generated content. Which of course brings in interactivity and not to miss on collaboration. Now, if you speak about Web 1.0, that was the websites that we used to come across that were based on HTML, the web pages. If you speak about Web 2.0, it allows user to engage with content. Of course, if you're using websites such as Facebook, if you're using Instagram, or if you're using any type of media, any blog, any online community, this gives you an opportunity. This actually gives you an opportunity to interact. This gives you an opportunity to collaborate, and this focuses on user generated content. Now, there are many examples to this. If you speak about some popular examples over here, we have Facebook, if I may write. So we have Facebook as an example. We have Wikipedia as an example. We have X, and what do you call it? Formerly known as Twitter. So The development of Web 2.0 has transformed the internet into a more dynamic and a participatory space. So, this has led to the internet being so the media now, or the new media is a more dynamic. Just drag this up and makes myself some space. So the new media today is a more dynamic and participatory platform or a space. Now, as we've spoken about the development of Web 2.0 in this day and age, as we take this lesson in 2025, as I usually put it, we are almost through with the first quarter of the 21st century. Today there is this emergence of or the development or the popularity that artificial intelligence is gaining today, also referred to as AI. If you talk about blockchain, they're all examples of Web 3.0, and this is considered to be the next stage of internet, which is designed in a manner that it is more intelligent. I think we should just write it down as well. If you have it written down, there's a high likelihood that you might end up using this in your answers as well. So your answers do not necessarily have to be restricted to the content that is there in the book alone. This is designed to be more intelligent. It is decentralized, and it is also very personalized. If you speak about examples over here, you could write down about AI, artificial intelligence. You could talk about blockchain, or you could write down about metaverse. Artificial intelligence also are more commonly referred to as AI. If you want to know what blockchain is, I just put it down over here. This would help you. Just So, the development of Web 3.0, this is, of course, the stage that has preceded Web 2.0. This is the next stage. This is designed to be more intelligent. This is designed to be more decentralized. This is designed to be more secure. This is designed to be more personalized as well. Now, artificial intelligence is an example. You don't have to learn this, but knowing this, if this occurs to you while writing your answers on new media, this would of course be better. So, for the ones who do not know what blockchain is, I'm sure you at some point or the other have heard of cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, they use these digital ledgers, and these digital ledgers, they work like a chain of blocks where each block contains information, and this information is linked to the previous one. Because this information is so decentralized, no single person or a company gets to control it, which automatically makes it more secure, and it gets difficult or it is tougher when it comes to hacking. So this is another advancement. Moving on, if we speak about metaverse, this is a virtual world where people can interact, they can work, and they can also play using digital avatars. So, metaverse actually blends virtual reality, augmented reality, and the internet to create a more immersive online experience. Now, I'm sure what is the name? I think the name is Roblox. So Roblox, this game that kids play. I'm not sure only if only kids play or adults play it too. This game that is available on PlayStation 5. This you get to play. You get to. I mean, you play through avatars. People can attend virtual concerts. They buy digital land. They meet other people through the 3D digital space. There are different companies that have invested in this. For example, Meta, Facebook. Now, we were talking about, now this is the latest one for now. We were talking about the characteristics. We were talking about the characteristics of new media. And as we speak about the characteristics of new media, like I had said, how is it that the new media can be differentiated from traditional media? These were the four different characteristics that we had spoken about. Number one, we had spoken about digitalization. Then we spoke about convergence, followed by compression, followed by interactivity. Now, these four different characteristics of the new media make the new media very different from traditional media such as the newspaper, traditional media such as the newspaper, traditional media such as books, traditional media such as television, so on and so forth. Now, if we take this a little further, we talk about the connection or the link that we have between the new media, globalization, and digital divides. Let me just put up a heading over here. Let's pick up a new page. So what we talk about right now is the new media, globalization, and digital divides. The new media, globalization, and digital divides. I'd like to assume we know what the new media is, and our understanding on the new media is enough for us to be able to proceed. I'm pretty sure most of you would know what globalization is as well, but I just, for the sake of further clarity, when we use the word globalization, globalization is a term that you use to refer to the increasing interconnectedness the increasing interconnectedness of the world. This can be done through trade. This can be done through technology. This could be done through culture. For instance, people in our part of the world, the amount of increasing interest people are taking in consuming South Korean movies, South Korean music, etc., etc. So globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness of the world, and over here we're talking about interconnectedness in terms of technology and communication. Now, it wouldn't be wrong if we say the internet and the new media have accelerated globalization. So, internet. Imagine people in our country, let's say someone from Pakistan, the way people have shown interest in the South Korean culture, don't you think it has a lot, if not all of it, has to do with internet, all of it has to do with globalization, all of it has to do with the new media. So when we use the word globalization, globalization involves all parts of the world becoming increasingly interconnected, so much so that the physical national boundaries that we have, they have started losing their significance. The physical boundaries, of course, they're there. If you try walking into another country, they wouldn't really allow to. But at the same time, this interconnectedness that we have today, which we never did back in the past, this is making people exchange ideas. This is helping people connect with each other. I think the increasing this has led to an increased global flow of information, an increased global flow of ideas, an increased global flow of goods, ideas, uh information, so on and so forth. So globalization, I hope everyone does have a basic idea on what globalization is. Taking this further, if we use the word digital divide, what does the word digital divide over here mean? The digital divide refers to the gap between those who have access to digital technology and the internet, or we could just make this shorter by access to the internet and those who do not. When we talk about digital divides could be on the basis of economic differences between different parts of the world. This could be because of geographical differences. This could be because of social factors, could be in terms of age, could be in terms of gender. This is what I can think of right now. So the new media and globalization, they connect people. However, when you talk about digital divide highlights inequalities in access to these benefits. Not everyone today in this, not everyone today has an equal amount of access when it comes to the internet. I don't want to forget, wait, geographical, another factor, political factors. Yeah, political factors play a very important role over here as well. I'm sure as we cover this topic, there would be more points that would occur to me as well. So, as we speak about the connection between the new media, globalization, and digital divides, let's do one thing. Let's discuss the relationship or the connection between the new media and globalization first, and then we'd hop on to the connection between the new media and digital divides. So, I'd like to put up a separate heading over here for the sake of clarity, a separate subheading, let's just say the new media, a subheading, So, when we talk about the new media and globalization, we're actually referring to how the new media has played in its role in terms of interconnectedness. So, the new media has, without any doubt, played a part in the process of globalization through their ability to compress both space and time. Space has been compressed because you have access to, or you can actually communicate with people in far-fetched areas of the world which you had not even thought of before. And it is, of course, compressed time as well, because people are able to communicate not only with people with whom they have with whom they're geographically distant, but at the same time this communication is almost instantaneous. It's just, I mean, you could send a message sitting over here, you could send a message to someone in the United States of America, and it takes less than a second for your message to reach there, and in a couple of seconds you get your reply back as well. So when we speak about when we speak about, or as we speak about the relationship between the new media and globalization, this, it wouldn't be wrong for us to say this has compressed both space in terms of geographical distance and time. So because of this particular feature of the new media, today it has become easier for people to be able to communicate with like-minded individuals even when they're residing in the other corner of the world. So this has led to the development of virtual communities of like-minded people. Let's just say if there are different scholars who are researching on global warming, they're from different parts of the world, they can always stay connected. There are so many different platforms that we have through which they can almost always stay connected. Information, different types of information, including audio visual material, can be transmitted via the internet across national boundaries by groups and organizations for educational purposes, for cultural reasons, for commercial purposes, or even political purposes too. So, when we talk about the connection between the new media and globalization, this, if I put it in the most simplistic of manner, this has compressed space, this has compressed time as well. Another point that I believe we should also write down over here: this, people are today have an opportunity to be a part of virtual communities of like-minded people. Now, having said that, let's quickly hop on and talk about the relationship between the new media and digital divides. Like I had said earlier, what does the word digital divide over here mean? The digital divide refers to the gap between those who have access to the internet and those who do not have access to the internet. And if you remember, a couple of minutes ago, I had spoken about different factors that could be playing their role over here: differences in terms of economy, differences in terms of geography, differences in terms of different social factors. These different social factors could be age, could be gender, because of political reasons as well. Now, taking this a little further, as we speak about the new media and digital divides, like I said, the digital divide highlights inequalities. This highlights inequalities in access to the internet. So this highlights inequalities in access to the internet. If we take this a little further, if I show you some statistics from the international now, by the end of 2017, roughly half, that is 48% of the world's population regularly was connected to the internet. Now, we're talking about statistics from, let's just say, 2017. We could say 48% of the world's population regularly connected to the internet. However, if you talk about statistics, so these statistics are from the International Telecommunication UNESCO Union from UNESCO. If I talk about statistics from, let's just say, 2024, 68% of the global population, let's use the word global over here as well. Not that it makes a difference, but it would just be easier for you to remember. 68% of the global population regularly were connected to the internet. And if we compare this with 2023, I just want to show you an increase. So if we're having a look at statistics from 2023, 65% of the global population was connected to the internet. Now, if you talk about a comparison between statistics from 2017 compared to statistics from 2023 compared to statistics from 2024, we're of course witnessing an increase. And this figure that we have from 2024, this makes it around 5.5. I'll just pick up another color. This makes it around 5.5 billion people. Do you realize, even when we say around 68% of people, even when we say there are around 68% people who are regularly connected to the internet, we should also realize that there are around 32% of the people who are not. So these 32% people make around 2.6 billion people. These 2.6 billion people, they remain offline, and this of course highlights and highlights inequalities, or helps us understand this idea of digital divide here. So we're talking about the extent to which there's a gap between the extent to which we're talking about the extent to which there's a gap between the people who have access to the internet and people who do not have access to the internet. So if we take this a little further, I would like to add this up over here as well. Let me just use the same page. So if we talk about this, the countries that are more developed, I don't think I'll be able to fit in here. So if we take this a little further, we're talking about countries, if we talk about countries with highest internet usage, twenty 24, to begin with, Europe. You talk about Europe and let's just say USA, or for Europe, around 92% of population. See, even in Europe, there are 8% who do not have access. So that's the point that we're trying to make over here. And for the United States, this makes it around 87% of the population have access to internet, or these are the people who regularly use internet. So what we're trying to highlight over here are inequalities are the differences amongst people who do have access to the internet and the people who do not have access to the internet. So if we take this these are the more developed countries, of course, and if we talk about countries such as, if we talk about African countries here, in Africa, 38% of the population has access to the internet. Look at the differences. If you talk about LDCs, that are least developed countries, this is around 35%. 35% of the population. If you talk about low income countries, that this goes even lower. This makes it around 27% of population. Just the difference. Compare the difference. Just look at the extent to which people from low income countries have access to the internet compared to the people from the more developed parts of the world. So it wouldn't be wrong for us to say that more developed countries, the countries that are more developed, The countries that are economically, or right, say richer countries. On the other hand, if you talk about less developed countries, also referred to as LDCs. Now, this is just one factor, and we're talking about differences in terms of, let's just say, economic differences. Let's put up a heading over here. Along with these economic differences, let's just highlight this in purple. Or let me just put up number one here. The second factor that I'd like to bring in under discussion over here would be political factors. Political regimes, or political factors, or political factors, political differences, political regimes. It's one and the same thing. So, as much as your economy or the economic development of a particular country makes a difference, your political regime, that the political regime that you're living under, makes a difference too. Access to online media for people living in authoritarian regimes is often limited by the governments as compared to people who are living in democratic regimes. And in our previous lesson, we have already spoken about the difference between authoritarian regimes and what do you call it? Authoritarian regimes, what do you call them? Democratic regimes, hybrid regimes, so on and so forth. So we could say, it wouldn't be wrong if we say, if you're talking about a comparison between authoritarian and democratic regimes. So authoritarian regimes often use censorship that doesn't allow, or there's less access to the internet. Authoritarian regimes allow less access to the internet. They use various mechanisms such as censorship, firewalls. For instance, as we speak about firewalls, we cannot miss on the China's Great Firewall, which blocks many Western platforms. Like in China, you cannot use Google, Facebook, or Twitter, and we cannot even we shouldn't be forgetting the extent to which Russia, as a political regime, the political regime in Russia controls over many social media platforms, which is again an example of censorship. So these could be few examples over here. Whereas on the other hand, if we speak about democratic regimes, they generally, or rather say apparently, if not generally, the word apparently I think would be doing justice here. Democratic regimes, you'd see them, they generally or apparently promote free access to the internet. Now, we spoke about economic factors, we spoke about political factors. Number three, let's talk about some social factors. Social factors in terms of, let's just say, age. Social factors, let me just put up a heading, social factors here, such as your age, your social class, your gender. So these are again factors that help us understand digital divides. I hope you're all connected and you all understand what we're up to. We're talking about digital divides. Where this heading that we were discussing, the topic that we're discussing over here was the new media and its relationship to globalization and digital divides. We had initially spoken about the new media and globalization. We went on to talk about the new media and digital divides. Initially, we spoke about the extent to which countries from different parts of the world they have access to the internet. We had spoken about how in 2017, if we have a look at the statistics from the International Telecommunication Union from in 2017, around 48% of the global population was connected to the internet. This has increased, of course, in 2024, and these 4 and 3 from their 7 years. From 48%, this has increased to 68%, but that again means that even when there are 68% of the global population who are regularly connected to the internet, we have 32% of them that are not connected to the internet. Having said that, after discussing economic differences, we have spoken about political factors, and now we're moving on towards social factors. And as we speak about social factors over here, to begin with, if we speak about age, while we discuss age as a factor, I'd want to draw your attention to this, to the concept or to the terms that were coined by Mark Pesky in the year 2001. And over here, I'd like to discuss the difference between the digital natives and digital immigrants. Now, I believe the term digital natives and digital immigrants in itself is pretty self explanatory. But for the sake of further clarity, when we use the word digital natives, we are talking about individuals who typically born from the 1980s onwards. Typically, not necessarily, because I repeat, the exact cutoff points aren't fixed here, right? There's no clear-cut distinction over here. But when we speak about digital natives, we are referring to individuals who typically born from the 1980s onwards, the 1980s onward generation. There are some sociological thinkers, some scholars who believe we're talking about the people who were born in the early 1990s, but uh, I'd like to stick to this one, 1980s, because this allows me to call myself a digital native as well. So these were the people who actually grew up with the internet, who were born 1918 onward, 1980s onwards. These were the people who actually did grew up with internet, with computers, with mobile technology. And if I talk about these people, they'd be, I mean, if we talk about 2025, they'd be 45 years, below 45 years. They'd be under 45 years, under 45 years in 2025. On the other hand, when we talk about digital immigrants, these are people who were born before 1980s, when digital technology was not widespread. And these were people who actually had to adapt to the internet. They had to adapt to internet. I mean, if you talk about your parents, they had to adapt to social media. They had to adapt to smartphones. When I was young, there were no smartphones. So these were the people who would be over 25 years today. Over 45 years, I'm sorry. Over 45 years in 2025. So, having said that, let me reiterate, let me remind you that there is no exact cutoff criteria, but this distinction, I believe, does highlight how different generations interact with the digital media, how different generations interact with the new media. So, if we talk about these age gaps, like Mark Pesky, did I mention his name? No, I did not. I just need to drag this over here to. So these they are more digitally literate, so another factor that we shouldn't miss on over here is social class. And of course, when you talk about the usage of internet, if you this depends on the ownership of appropriate hardware as well. As you speak about social class, I mean, let's just call this when I highlight this one with green maybe. So a lot of highlighting doesn't make a lot of sense as well, but for now it is what it is. So if we talk about social class is another factor. Ownership of appropriate hardware, such as computers, laptops, smartphones, iPads, etc., etc. The last factor, so here we spoke about age, here we spoke about social class. I'd like to discuss gender over here as well. Now, if we or as we speak about gender, it is believed by many that digital technology has been gendered as more masculine. So if we talk about this particular aspect over here, historically digital technology has been very gendered, has been referred to as or has been linked to masculinity. But over these years, I believe in the recent past especially, this concept, this notion has evolved today. And nonetheless, gender, we cannot ignore the fact that gender is still or does still hold a lot of significance. So we still have some evidence that digital technology has been gendered. Digital technology has been Digital technology has been gendered. Let's discuss how. Number one, we could talk about how we have male dominated tech industry. The digital as well as the tech industry, they have long been dominated by men. We've had very few women who have been playing roles such as playing the role in terms of a software developer. If I may give you an example, for instance, you could talk about cybersecurity as well as AI. So one factor that we could discuss over here is male dominated tech industry. And not to forget, in the recent past, even Silicon Valley has been criticized for its gender gap in employment and leadership roles when it comes to females. So, if we, having said that, if we this, that's the first factor that we could bring in under discussion. Number two, we could talk about another factor that has contributed to this: early stereotypes as well as education. So through gender role socialization, the gender based distinctions that are drawn between male children and female children, with the passage of time, we see them being reinforced through the education system. So from the 1980s onwards, when computing and video games started gaining popularity, they were primarily marketed for males. They were primarily marketed for boys. Your parents, if you have try having a discussion with them, probably a father, probably your father did own a gaming console and your mother did not, right? So probably not necessarily. And this further reinforces the idea that digital technology was seen to be something that males would take interest in, which of course it wouldn't be wrong for us to say had discouraged many girls from pursuing careers not only in technology, but their contribution towards computer sciences, their contribution towards, like I mentioned earlier, software development, towards cybersecurity, towards artificial intelligence, even today has been a little too I mean, this it's less than it should have been. The third factor that I'd like to bring in under discussion over here is representation in terms of media. Representation in media. If we, and as we speak about the role that media has played over here, we usually see males as being referred to as be males to be seen as being tax savvy individuals. Yeah, we see males as being tax savvy. If you talk about programmers, if you talk about scientists, if you talk about hackers, you usually see the television portraying males to be performing these roles, and which of course reinforces the perception that digital expertise is primarily a male domain. So having said that, if we take this a little further, we could talk about uh yeah. So if we talk about the final report of the European Commission on women in the digital age, I just want to write this down as well. Women in the digital age. So if you talk about a comparison between males and females, it has been reported that male graduates in information or let's just say male graduates in ICT, that is information and communications technology related fields, outnumbered which of course reflects the strong, maybe unconscious biases towards uh towards males, towards what do you call it, in favor of males, that of course go against females. So taking this a little ahead, if we talk about statistics, we had spoken about yeah, I believe this is enough for this part. Now, if we take this a little further, let's step into or dive into another idea that is considered to be important. I mean, there are many statistics that you guys could use over here as well. If you go back to the statistics from the International Telecommunications Union, if you talk about global internet users, there's been a, I think we just quickly write this down as well. This would help you ahead. So again, we have some statistics. Before we step into the next topic, the next subtopic, I mean, if we're speaking about statistics from international, so this, in other words, means 12% fewer women had access to the internet as compared to uh, men back in 2016. And this gap even widened when if we speak about the least developed countries, where it went to around 31%. So this is global. If you talk about the difference in USA, this was 2% gender gap. And if we speak about Africa, this was around 31, there was around 31% gender gap. Now, this we have spoken about three different dimensions today. We had initially spoken about the impact of the new media, where I had tried explaining you the characteristics. We initially spoke about what the new media was. We went on to discuss the characteristics of the new media. There were four different factors that we had taken under consideration over here. The four different factors, or the four different, rather say, characteristics of the new media, which we see in almost all different all of the different platforms of the new media. These were digitalization, convergence, compression, and interactivity. We went on to discuss the development of Web 2.0 and Web 3.0. We went on to discuss the connection or the relationship between the new media and globalization. And then we quickly hopped on to the relationship between the new media and digital divides. While discussing digital divides, we had initially picked up some statistics from the International Telecommunication Union, where we spoke about the extent to which there is global inequality in terms of the people who have access to the internet and the people who do not have access to the internet. Over these years, we see that there are more and more of people who are gaining access to the internet. But nonetheless, even if we speak about the latest statistics over here, statistics from 2024 reveal that around 68% of the global population today has access to the internet, whereas we still to this date have around 32% of the global population who does not have access to the internet. Having said that, we quickly moved on, and we spoke about the economic differences over here. We spoke about the differences or the distinctions between developed or the richer countries, and we compared them with less developed countries. We went on to speak about political factors, where we saw how authoritarian regimes gave less of access to the internet through censorship and firewalls, whereas on the other hand, democratic regimes, they generally they generally apparently, as it appears to be, face value, it looks like these democratic regimes, they have they give or they provide more of access to the internet. After discussing the economic factors and political factors, we went on to discuss social factors. While discussing social factors, we had further subdivided into three different categories. To begin with, we had spoken about age, followed by social class, and followed by gender. When we speak about age, or as we spoke about age, we spoke about the distinction between digital natives and digital immigrants. We went on to discuss social class, and after discussing social class, we went on to discuss gender. I'm going to go on and on this particular topic, but I wouldn't want to make it any longer. And let's quickly hop on to the last subtopic, which I believe is the most important one. And over here, we talk about digital optimism versus digital pessimism. So we're talking about digital optimism and digital pessimism. What is digital optimism? How is digital optimism different from digital pessimism? As we speak about digital optimism and digital pessimism, what actually is this? This is a debate that revolves around the idea that digital technology or the new media that we're talking about today has a positive impact on the society or has a negative impact on the society. So let's just put it like this. This happens to be the most important subtopic, the last one for today, but we need to cover this up first. So the idea that digital technology has a positive impact on society, or rather say new media has a positive impact on society. On the other hand, if we speak about digital pessimism, we're talking about the idea that the new media has a negative impact on the society. So before we begin, allow me to give you a bit of idea about this. As we speak about digital optimism, digital optimists, they believe that the internet and the new media, they empower individuals. They not only empower individuals, they enhance communication. They have created a more informed society. These digital optimists, as we refer to them, they argue that digital technology promotes participatory culture, where users actively engage in creating and sharing content. Understand the term. The term we're using over here is participatory culture. What does the word participatory culture mean? The idea that through new media, through digital technology, individuals or a layman has more of an opportunity to actively engage in not only creating content as well as exchanging, sharing content, rather than simply passively consuming it. So, taking this ahead as we speak about digital optimism, once we're done with digital optimism, I'd like to discuss three key thinkers over here. We'd quickly hop on to digital pessimism. So, as we speak about digital optimism over here, as far back as the 1960s, an influential media theorist who was a Canadian philosopher who was born in 1911, he died in 1980 in Toronto, Canada again. He predicted, so we're talking about digital optimism. I think I'll just put up a tiny little subheading over here. digital optimism. So, as we speak about digital optimism here, I want to bring in this gentleman with the name Marshall McLuhan. He made a prediction back in the 1960s. He was a Canadian. He died in 1980, and he made a prediction. He predicted that new communication, he predicted that new communication technologies would unite the world, would unite the world into a global village. And this line in itself sounds very optimistic. Read it again. New communication technologies. This was a prediction predicted in the 1960s. Let's make it like this. In the 1960s. So if you're talking about 1960s, 40 years from there, 25 more makes it around 65 years ago. So this gentleman, Marshall McLuhan, who was a Canadian philosopher, a media theorist, we just write it down. You don't have to learn this, but he was a Canadian philosopher. He was a media theorist. And you don't need to learn this. I'm just trying to give you a bit more of detail on this gentleman. So he predicted back in the 1960s that the new communication technologies would unite the world into a global village. So, the growth and rapid spread of digital technologies in recent decades, the ongoing digital divides notwithstanding, has provoked an extensive literature concerned to understanding this development and evaluate its likely impact on society. Now, what we're talking about over here is the extent to which people or media theorists they believed that these advancements in technology, they would help connect the world better. This would help unite the world better. How they felt like this would turn this world into a global village. So, about connecting people worldwide and breaking down barriers to communication, McLuhan, back in the 1960s, being more specific, 1964, he argued that the medium itself shapes society. What medium itself shapes society? The new media. And new media allows for greater interaction for understanding between cultures. Of course, the more you're able to connect with people, the more interconnectedness that this new media is providing us, the more we get to know about people in different parts of the world. Not only do we get to know about different people in different parts of the world, this also gives us an opportunity to understand the world we're a part of better. So, uh, I hope you all understand it so far. And if we take this a little further, if we talk about Nicholas Negroponte, let's take this further. Let's bring in a little ahead. According to him, the digital age displays four powerful qualities, and they are, to begin with, number one, decentralization. Information being decentralized today. How is this being optimistic? Because you know what, based on the idea that if any one single media organization, or if any single media group, or if any single social group has control over, or has access over information, or is powerful enough to yeah, is powerful enough to, can't think of the right word, but if a single social group or if a particular media organization is so powerful that they're able to tell the world what they want to tell them, they can actually change ideologies. I mean, if you sprinkle a bit of Marxism over here, the traditional Marxist perspective, that is what their discussion primarily revolves around. So when and if, because of digital technology, because of the advancements in new age, if today information, or the media, or the information that we receive from the media, it is getting decentralized, which automatically means no single group, no single media organization can be powerful enough to change the way people around them think or believe in. That could be immense amount of power, that could be immense amount of power beyond our imagination. I mean, imagine if a particular group has, or is powerful enough to tell the world about what is right and what is wrong, they can change the way people think. And being able to change the way people think and change the way people behave and believe. So, the first one over here, according to Negroponte, the digital age displays four powerful qualities. The first one is decentralization. The second one is globalization, which we have spoken about a lot today. The third one is harmonization, bringing in harmony amongst people from different parts of the world, from different social groups, helping people unite on the basis of the similarities they share. Number four, empowerment. This new media has empowered people belonging to different social groups, has empowered people from different genders, has empowered people from different social classes. Imagine getting a hold of a smartphone today is way easier as compared to how things were back, let's just say, just a decade ago. With the extent to which people, even in our part of the world, which is referred to as a third world country, if you see, even if you talk about your domestic help at home, the people who drive for you, the people who provide you safety and security, if you're talking about gatekeepers over here, I mean the actual gatekeepers, not the term gatekeeper that we use in the media, they all have they all not only own a smartphone, but at the same time they have access to internet as well, be it through Wi-Fi, be it through the packages that different telecommunication companies today offer. Don't you think this is empowering people? This is empowerment beyond differences in terms of social class, beyond differences in terms of gender, beyond differences in terms of any color, creed, region, religion, nationality, so on and so forth. Now, while I say this, remember a couple of minutes ago, I explained you what digital divides were. And this is, I believe, the beauty of paper four, where you get more marks for evaluation. Let me remind you all, the typical 35 mark question that you get in your CAIEs, your marking mechanism, if you talk about the marking distribution, a typical 35 mark question is marked in terms of three different assessment objectives. That is assessment objective 1, assessment objective 2, and assessment objective 3. Assessment objective 1, that is knowledge and understanding, is worth 9 marks. Assessment objective 2, that has to do with interpretation and application, is worth 9 marks. However, assessment objective 3, also referred to as AO3, that is evaluation analysis, for that you get 15 marks. So while I try to explain Negropon's point of view, where he believes that this advancements in technology has further led to empowering individuals, we also need to keep in mind that this empowerment that we're talking about isn't something that we witness across the globe. So there were differences, there are differences even today as I speak, the differences still persist. Now, having said that, according According to Negroponte, digital technology will empower the ordinary citizen and reduce the extent to which power is centralized in the state. In the future, people will be able to cooperate with each other on a global scale, even though they're geographically distant. Such cooperation will lead to greater harmony and strengthened international bonds. So that's a lot of optimism from this gentleman. Having said that, moving on, if we talk about another, a relatively more recent uh, example, we could speak about Henry Jenkins. Henry Jenkins in the year 2006. So this gentleman introduced the idea of participatory culture, the participatory culture that I have mentioned twice before. Participatory culture where the audience are no longer just consumers, but they're also creators of content. There are different platforms like the YouTube, Wikipedia, and different social media websites and applications. They allow individuals to contribute, not only contribute, but at the same time share the knowledge that they hold, that they have. Mr. Jenkins, Henry Jenkins, also highlights collective intelligence. What is collective intelligence over here? Where online collaboration helps solve problems and expand knowledge beyond what individuals could achieve alone. There are two terms that I have mentioned over here. The first one over here, the first term that I referred to was participatory culture. The second term that I referred to over here was collective intelligence. Now, taking this ahead, Jenkins suggests that interactivity and convergence have produced a participatory culture. So, according to Jenkins, Henry Jenkins, interactivity and convergence participatory culture. In other words, we're talking about a situation where media users, let's be more specific and use the word new media to avoid any sort of confusion. New media users, that is consumers, are no longer passive. One. Number two, the distinction between producers and consumers has blurred today. So, individuals who consume the media, they're now participants who interact with each other according to a new set of rules that are constantly evolving. This has produced more of control at the user end compared to the past. For example, Jenkins talks about how people today are more a part of an online digital world. Today we have different platforms that allow different bloggers, which I mean this opportunity that they have today, this wasn't something that they would have had back in the past. So I could go on and on and on, but this has already taken a lot longer than I thought it would take. So one, we spoke about the participatory culture. Number two, we could speak about how interactivity has produced a collective intelligence. What does this term collective intelligence over here mean? Like I said, there's a lot of online collaboration that helps solve problems and expand knowledge beyond what individuals could achieve alone. There's a uh, very interesting quotation by Henry Jenkins where notes, none of us can know everything. Each of us knows something. When I could write it down as well, I mean, you could write it down as well. I'd just read this again. None of us know everything. Each of us knows something, and we can put the pieces together if we pool our resources and combine our skills. Jenkins claims that such collective intelligence can be seen as an alternative source of media power to that of media owners. Imagine for a bit if this collective intelligence is put to the right use, and if it is allowed to be put in the if it is allowed to be put in use, don't you think this would eventually, if not instantly, slowly and gradually, maybe slowly and gradually maybe undermine the power that the media organizations, the media conglomerates actually possess. Now, taking this ahead, we initially spoke about Macklin. We went on to refer to Negroponte, and then we went on and we spoke about Henry Jenkins. Now, if we take this a little further, we could speak about digital pessimism. So we've already covered optimism. About sociology, as I say, the more you read, the better you understand. The more you write, the better grade you get in your CIs. Taking this ahead, the final subheading of a subheading, that is digital pessimists. Now, about digital pessimists, like I said, they argue that the new media leads to misinformation, right? So we've spoken about a lot of good things about the new media. Now, let's have a look at the flip side of the coin. According to digital pessimists, they argue that the new media leads to misinformation. This leads to social division. This leads to the decline of critical thinking. Digital pessimists believe that the internet prioritizes soft news over hard news. Over here, before I proceed, it's important that I explain you what the difference between soft news over here is and how is soft news different from hard news. So when you talk about news that has to do with entertainment and gossip, maybe celebrities, maybe this refers to as soft news. And if we compare the term soft news with hard news, we're talking about, as many sociological thinkers, as many media theorists refer to it, as serious journalism. We're talking about political issues. So all of this, according to digital pessimists, could lead to a less informed public, which is totally opposite of what the digital optimists had been claiming about. So, to begin with, we speak about the role or the work of Andrew Keen. And Andrew Keen, uh, in the book, the name of the book is The Cult of the Amateur. If you try Googling this, if you try searching this on Google, also referred to as Googling. So, if you try searching this on Google, it has a very interesting uh, book cover. So, The Cult of the Immature, this book was written, or rather say published in the year 2008. Let's quickly move on and talk about Andrew Keen and the four claims that he made. Andrew Keen in the year 2008. The book over here is referred to as, in his book, The Cult of the Amateur. One, Keen looks very skeptical of the idea or criticizes the notion of he he is skeptical. The word skeptical is better. He's skeptical about the notion of collective intelligence that was advocated by Henry Jenkins. So, taking this ahead, we're talking about some skepticism that was faced by Henry Jenkins, and this was put forward by Andrew Keynes. He makes four major claims. He as in Keen. He makes four main claims over here. So, according to Keen, number one, to begin with, according to Keen, he has been highly critical of user generated content. He argues that the rise of bloggers, influencers, and citizen journalism has weakened professional journalism. He warns that false information and sensationalism spreads easily, making it harder to separate fact from fiction. I'd like to write this down, but okay, let's stick to these 4 points for now. So, according to Andrew Keen, social networking websites such as Facebook and YouTube are creating a culture of digital narcissism. So, let's quickly put this up over here. Social media websites or social networking websites are creating a culture of digital narcissism. So, Keene argues that these websites have become shrines for self broadcasting. They exist so that we can advertise ourselves. Everything from our favorite books and movies to photos from our summer vacations to testimonials praising our more winsome moments or recapping our latest drunken exploits. According to Andrew Keene, digital narcissism promotes, or rather say excessively self helps, has provided individuals or has made individuals excessively self promote themselves. People today are obsessed with likes and followers. People today seek validation from online engagement. According to Keene, this leads to a dopamine driven social media addiction. According to Keene, these social networking websites, they develop, or they lead to superficial connections, superficial relationships that have more to do with image and status rather having to do with any sort of genuine relationship. You should we or rather we could also bring in this notion of FOMO, as your generation refers to this as FOMO, fear of missing out, seeing others lives being perfect, lives or wanting more of likes. Like I had said, this leads to comparison, this leads to anxiety, and this unfortunately leads to lowering self-esteem. According to Keene, this notion of digital narcissism that we're talking about over here, this digital narcissism is, I mean, people actually look forward towards very short, people today have very short attention span. They look for instant gratification, they look for instant satisfaction. They want to experience, like I had initially mentioned, this dopamine driven social media addiction. People constantly today look for approvals. This can make people more impatient. This can make people less tolerant of the real world setbacks. So we could go on and on and on. According to Keene, he notes that 50% of bloggers blog for sole purpose of reporting and sharing experiences from their personal lives. Consequently, Keene argues that the internet has become a mirror to ourselves. Rather than using it to seek news, information, or culture, we use it to actually be the news, right? We use it to actually be the news. We want to be the news. We want likes. We want online validation. We want online engagement. We care about our online image and status. We lead, which often leads to superficial connections, FOMO, looking for instant gratification, us being less tolerant of the real world setbacks. One. Number two, the second point, according to Keene, open source sites such as Wikipedia, they undermine the authority of experts and teachers and encouraging plagiarism. Open source sites such as Wikipedia are undermining the authority of experts, encouraging plagiarism. So even if I talk about Wikipedia over here, all of you, or rather say most of you, if not, would be aware that Wikipedia gives individuals an opportunity, rather say everyone with an agenda, with an ideology, could be negative, could be positive, can rewrite an entry to the liking. They can re-enter things. They can edit things. No one is being paid to check their credentials. We're talking about Wikipedia over here, or for the matter of fact, being able to evaluate the material. What does this lead to? Consequently, this leads to internet sites being more vulnerable. You cannot trust the content you get to read, or you get to read or see on the internet, which, because as somewhere in your mind you have this idea that there's no one out there to validate or to check the credential. No one is there to validate, or no one is there to confirm the authenticity of the content that you're coming across. Moreover, the internet is undermining the very concept of ownership, plagiarism. This, according to Keene, has led to creating a generation of plagiarists and copyright thieves with little respect for intellectual property. So, according to Keene, this digital revolution is creating a generation of cut and paste, a generation of cut and paste burglars who view all content on the internet as a common property. So, you see how Andrew Keene, in his book, The Cult of the Immature, doesn't look very happy about the widespread growth of the new media. But the third point over here is anonymous blogs slash immature content, maybe through Twitter, undermine informed expertise and professional journalism. So, undermining informed expertise and professional journalism. So, yeah, now because of there being a lack of credibility, unlike professional journalists, anonymous bloggers, they're not bound by ethical reporting standards, which consequently and unfortunately, according to Andrew Keene, blurs the line between fact and opinion, which of course reduces the quality of online information. So Keene argues that the majority of blogs and tweets do not deliver anything worthwhile because essentially blogging and tweeting are merely about expressing shrill superficial opinion rather than considered analysis and judgments. Blogs and tweets, according to him, spread rumors as facts and actually undermine the truth. So one person's truth becomes as true as anyone else's. And I mean, there are so many, there are countless examples that you all would be aware of. More, you'd know of more informations than I can probably think of, where people make things appear to be true on the internet even when they're not. And sadly and unfortunately, there aren't many there we don't really have any mechanism through which we could confirm the authenticity of any news. So according to Andrew Keene, this again is very unfortunate that anonymous blogs, amateur content writers, content creators, they have eventually undermined professional journalism. Taking this ahead, the fourth one, I'm trying to keep it a little, it's already been a while, so I'm trying to wrap this up as soon as possible. So there's the fourth issue that he sees is a rise in digital literacy. A rise in digital literacy. This rise in digital literacy has led to a decline in cultural literacy. So, according to Andrew Keen, the rise in digital literacy has led to a decline in cultural literacy. Keen claims that the more skilled young people become in using the tools of the digital revolution, the more ignorant they become about the objective world around them. And if we take this, the internet, if we talk about the usage of the internet, it encourages quick information consumption. And as some people see, or many people would see this quick information consumption a good thing, but at the same time, we cannot miss on the point that this has led to people undermining the importance of the significance that deep reading of books like physical books, historical texts, or classical literature would have. So understand this line: the rise in digital literacy has led to a decline in cultural literacy. According to Berlin in the year 2008, or I believe it was 2009, he argues that the dumbest generation, that young people, while digitally skilled, lacked historical and literary knowledge due to their preference for online content over traditional education. So, Borland in 2009 terms the dumbest generation. We're talking about internet users over here. We're talking about digital natives here, which they believe the internet is eroding. It's eroding our ability to concentrate and contemplate on things intellectually. The mental prerequisite that is required, it allows us to read and digest books. People are lacking that today. So this digital revolution is therefore transforming internet users into skimmers with low attention spans and poor cognitive skills. uh yes, this is I believe is uh yeah. So we could go on and on and on. We could talk about the last person that I'd want to refer to, since we've only spoken about Andrew Keen. I'd like to bring in the last thinker for today, and this has to be the last. Let's talk about Robert McChesney. So if we have a look at what McChesney has to say, he shows his concern with the third of Keen's point, and this third of Keen's point was the impact of the internet on journalism, especially print journalism. So our concern over here is on the impact of the internet on journalism. So, if we take this a little further, according to McChesney, journalism is a public good which plays a vital role in democracy. So, none of us can, I'm sure none of us would want to question this. Journalism, of course, without any doubt, plays a or is expected to play quite an important, significant, a vital role in terms of how the democratic societies run and operate. But as internet companies have grown, they have sucked advertising money away from the press. So, people today do not, or different companies, let's just say the companies that manufacture the manufacturers, different manufacturers, they today do not like putting up the advertisements. I mean, if I ask you today, if you have a startup, you launch a product, if I ask you if you'd want to put up an advertisement in the Daily Dawn newspaper, or you'd alternatively want to spend that amount of money on any online platform, you'd probably opt for online platform, which consequently leads to the closure, which consequently leads to the closure of printed press. And this has negatively impacted professional journalism. The four most visited websites in 2012 in the United States were Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, and Facebook. We're talking about 2012, right? And these companies, according to statistics which are not very recent, but nonetheless there are statistics that are there, they had attracted two-thirds of the revenue from advertising on the internet in the USA by 2012. Remember, today, as I speak, we're in 2025, and uh, I mean, we're talking about statistics from 13 years ago, which eventually leads to these the print journalism lacking funds. People today opt for paid freelancers, and of course, when you talk about paid freelancers, the content that they would provide you might not be able to match the content that was provided to you back in the past. According to McChesney, there's been a decline in journalism. Independent investigative journalism today is struggling as digital media prioritizes their profit driven, you could also say clickbait content over serious news. So this, according to McChesney, he views that the digital revolution is a missed opportunity where corporate interests have turned the internet into a tool for profit and a tool for control and misinformation. So, if we talk about McChesney and we conclude this, the internet has undermined journalism's watchdog role. It has undermined professional journalist standards and has consequently resulted in trivialization of content. So this, I mean, we could go on and on, but I believe this should be enough for this particular topic. We were talking about we had started off with we had started off with this topic, and the name of this topic was, if I take you back, the name of this topic was the impact of the new media. So when you talk about new media, A levels sociology paper 4, new media is a topic that you get questions on. This was the first part to it. It took us a lot more time. One, I wanted to share as much of information as I could. Number two, we were writing as well, and that took us a bit of a while. So I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.